Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fun and Games Podcast. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I'm Matt A.K. Stormageddon.
And you're listening to episode 172. And this episode, we are kind of following up accidentally our previous episode about the Sega Genesis because Matt and I recently attended the Sonic Symphony performance here in New York City. It's been touring around. We wanted to share some thoughts and reflections on it, and also video game concerts in general, but we were also joined by one other person, our associate producer, Sarah Moonen. So she's on here as well. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome back.
Thanks. Excited to be here. I love when I get to kick Geoff out of the booth and play with the walls.
I can now formally thank you for filling in for me on our MagFest episode, which I wouldn't have been very useful for anyway, because I didn't go, but still.
Yeah, that's all right. No, we had a great time.
I love that you are apparently on here talking about video game music things when I think you are the least music person out of the three of us, Sarah.
Oh, by far.
By far, yes.
By
yes,
far
absolutely.
I am.
That's just how it goes. I love it.
It is. But yeah, we got to see the Sonic Symphony. So the Sonic Symphony started touring, I believe, after the 30th anniversary. That's when the album came out as well around there. And they've been doing this tour of a mix of classical renditions of old and new school Sonic songs, and then essentially all of the Sonic rock that has been integral to Sonic since the 2000s. Or no, the early 90s, because 98, I think, is when Sonic Adventure came out. So since the late 90s. And it was, like 2.5, 3 hours long? Something like that? I don't remember now.
It was
almost 3 hours long.
Almost 3 hours. There was an intermission, and it was wonderful. This performance now is going on as they celebrate the Year of Shadow, which everyone knows, of course, it's the Year of Shadow. And we wanted to chat about the concert because, one, I realized Geoff and I have done a general episode on video game music, and we've talked about, video game inspired music. We've had nerdcore rappers on before as guests. We've never talked about the touring symphony scene, which is pretty popular both in and around video games, especially Sonic, Final Fantasy, Video Games Live, and the list goes on. And thought it'd be a fun opportunity to talk specifically about our experience at this concert, and then broadly these kinds of shows and just kind of live video game related music in general.
Yeah. One of the funny things that actually, Sarah, I don't want to take this from you, but a very funny thing about how the concert was divided, because Matt, as you noted, there was that shift towards more rock-oriented vocal music in Sonic games with Sonic Adventure, with the Dreamcast. And the whole first half before the intermission, they didn't do any vocal music. They did these beautiful symphonic suites, mixes, whatever you want to call it, because all of the music in the Genesis era and around then, they're loops.
I think they considered them medleys.
Medleys would be good, yeah. So many words for things. Medley is correct, though. But the loops themselves aren't more than a few minutes at most, like a minute and a half, maybe two. So looping them together is great. No one is left out. Look, if they did 7 minutes of Chemical Plant Zone, I'd love that, but other people would get upset. So putting that all together made a lot of sense, and it was all very nice. And they took a break, and it was just a sudden shift, which, now that I think back, was kind of how I felt when I first played Sonic Adventure. So good immersion there. Good immersion.
Yeah, so I'm just going to come right out and say it. I'm not sure I really played any Sonic games after the Genesis. I played a little bit of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, but mostly just flew around and collected stuff and didn't really listen to the music. So I assumed the entire concert was going to be what that first half was. I didn't wear great shoes. I thought we'd be sitting. We had first row balcony seats. I was cheering. It was great. I think at one point, Geoff, you even leaned over to me and said, wow, if this whole concert is like this, these medleys that really represent what these shows are, I will be happy.
I did say that, yeah. They did them in release order at the outset. They did Sonic 1, Sonic 2, and then they did Sky Sanctuary from Sonic 3 and Knuckles. So this was probably during Sonic 2 where I went, oh, is this just what we're getting? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and they sounded great. It was really fun. They had interesting footage clips that they pulled together to really represent each of the different stages. I felt like I could use that to show somebody what Sonic was to me growing up. Mm-hmm. And then after we came back from intermission, a full rock band came out, and I learned that apparently there's a lot of pop, punk, and metal in Sonic, and I'm
Correct.
Thrilled. And I feel like we'll get to this, but we immediately came home and were like, what 3D Sonics can I play? And I got really excited to start playing these because it was definitely the kind of thing I like listening to, but it wasn't my experience of what Sonic games were.
And I don't have a ton of 3D Sonic experience myself. I'm aware of some titles more than others, and a few of them I have the title, and that's about it. So on the flip side, I had a bunch of times during the second half, Sarah was leaning over to me and going, "What Sonic is this from?" And I'm just like, I don't fucking know. And kind of piecing it together by like, oh, I see that character. Surely it's this game. Or I guess it's that. Or whatever it is. Like, whenever I saw 2 Sonics, I went, I guess that's Generations, not realizing how many other times that happened. But this was what I had. But it was also great advertising because, yeah, we came home and went, what have we got? We got to play something. Oh, my God. I need to play 3D Sonic.
Yeah, Sarah, next time you should sit next to me during one of these.
I agree.
Because I knew everything.
I suggested that. I was just like, ask that later.
So, yeah, I, as the Sonic superfan, fanatic, you might say, insane, some people might use the word. I've played every single Sonic game except Sonic Heroes. There's no reason I've excluded Sonic Heroes. I just missed it on the PS2 for some reason. I plan to remedy that hopefully some point this year.
Until then, just make up a really dumb reason why. It's like, Sonic Heroes knows what it did.
I mean, I still have never seen Forrest Gump, and that is just because people after a few years kept going, I can't believe you've never seen that movie. And I went, well, now I'm just not going to see it on principle.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, so I'm super familiar with Sonic. Not only Sonic 3D games, but Crush 40, the band that has done a majority of them, not all of them. I'd say the later ones from like Colors Ons, there have been other artists, and like even in Sonic Frontiers, the newest one, that went really like screamo heavy metal even, is different artists. But it just fell out of my head that that's what we'd get, because once the medley started, I went, oh yeah, this is because I had also seen Distant Worlds. I've seen both versions. I've seen the broad Final Fantasy version of Distant Worlds, and then the Final Fantasy VII specific Distant Worlds. And that's, of course, almost completely lyricless. Although there are some vocal sung songs in Rebirth, so that may change in the future.
You know, you end with One Winged Angel and everyone's happy. But other than that, you just go.
Yeah, and Matt, I think even at intermission, you said to us, I don't know how they're going to do some of the newer Sonic songs since there isn't a singer out here.
And then I'd forgotten that when the 30th anniversary concert happened on that they live streamed, that they did this. They brought out the actual musicians, Crush 40, and I can't remember the name of the gentleman who wrote the Sonic Colors theme, but like they brought a bunch of those artists out to perform those songs with the symphony. That had fallen out of my head. And so when the second half and the band came out, I went, oh yeah, this is also Sonic, and then proceeded to cry for an hour and a half as they played some of my favorite songs over the last 10 years.
It was amazing how much the atmosphere in the room shifted at that moment.
Completely.
Right? Everyone was like sitting down on their best behavior, dressed amazingly, by the way. We didn't talk about the fact that everybody came ready to be at a Sonic event, from like inspired by things to full on gigantic costumes. And then the band came out, everybody stood up, and suddenly we were at a rock concert.
Yeah. So what happened specifically, and I shared this video online mostly for the benefit of friend of the show, Ken Shepard, who couldn't be at the concert and loves Shadow more than any other human on the face of this earth. But when the band came out, the logo switched from Sonic Symphony to Shadow Symphony, and then just said the Year of Shadow, and the opening drum beats to I Am All I Am started to play, and everyone lost their minds and stood up. And like, it just didn't occur to me that that shift was going to happen. And of course, as soon as it did, I filmed it so I could post it later and send it. And they encouraged it too. Like the lead singer was like, take videos, post it, tag us. Like they want folks to share it. To this day, my highest and wellest performing TikTok is me sharing that live performance and people with Shadow in the name of their usernames flipping out at the live performance, which I think is very entertaining. Before we get too far away from it, actually previous guest of the show, G of G to the Next Level, asked us a question about the concerts. What did you think of it being split between symphony and a rock concert? Would you have preferred one or the other? And I'll start by saying this was perfect. This is exactly what I wanted before I even knew I wanted it. I've been like on a listening kick. I even built a playlist for the three of us of all of my favorite and pretty much the best rock songs that have been featured in Sonic games, even ones that weren't performed at the concert. And then also been listening to the release of, I think it's the Prague version of the Sonic 30th Anniversary Symphony Tour. Like, I loved it. I would like a full show of either or, right? I would have also enjoyed a show that was all the rock stuff, because there's a ton more that they didn't play, or all symphonic stuff, because I kind of got gypped on Sonic 3 and Knuckles or Sonic Spinball and a few other games I could list.
Oh yeah, there was no Sonic CD. None.
No Sonic CD.
And no Supersonic Racing.
Yeah, they didn't.
No Sonic
No
R.
Sonic R, nothing. Like Sonic the Fighters. Like they didn't do any deep cuts. It's funny, the Symphony album has a bunch of medleys from all those games, even newer stuff like Mania, which I think we also got.
Yeah, we did get some Mania.
Yeah, the visual cut on Sonic Mania was one of my favorites. They made it
it's so
so
good.
funny.
Yeah, we'll dive more into the visuals in a bit, but I just want to say, like, I love this. I thought the split was brilliant, and I don't have any complaints at all.
I think because they gave us as long of a concert experience as they did, it was good. If they were trying to cram this into 90 minutes, I would feel like I had lost something or that so much is left behind. I mean, the fact that, yes, this did not allow enough room for super deep cuts on either side is at most a little meh. But they were able to hit the heights, and that was great because that also meant that there was something for enough of everybody that even when there was stuff I didn't recognize at all, just the sheer energy of the room was amazing. Hearing all of the vocal tracks in the second half, it was almost like the first half was nostalgia. The second half was, this is my childhood.
Yeah.
I'm reminded of not that long ago, Sarah and I went to a concert in Brooklyn. We went to the Say Anything is a Real Boy anniversary show.
Oh, I'm so mad I missed that, but that's such a fucking great album.
It's a great album. And the thing is, notwithstanding anything about the show itself, I bring this up mostly because they played Is a Real Boy from front to back, along with A Walk Through Hell as part of it.
Sure.
Having the entire room know all the words and singing along and just drowning in that almost. It's that same kind of feeling hearing all of those supercharged emotional songs from emotional moments from truly delightful, ridiculous games. Sonic is also a series that has been very much defined more than so many other long runners by 2D versus 3D. What's good, what's bad, when did we lose it, when did whatever. And so it's an interesting kind of like the Symphonic versus the Rock. They can both coexist, and it does have that sort of 2D, 3D going on with it too.
Yeah, and you interestingly touched on something I was going to say, Geoff, which is I don't go to concerts for music I don't know, typically. I know, crazy, but that's why we go to things like the Say Anything is a Real Boy concert, or we've done the same thing with Streetlight Manifesto a couple of times. I want to go to hear things that I know. And so I was like, oh yeah, sure, I know Sonic. And that's part of why I decided to go to this concert. So I think that if it was just a rock concert of stuff I didn't know from newer games, I would have actually been disappointed. I think that it was nice that there was this split. I was thrilled to be able to hear. Apparently, I think I've played the most Sonic 2 is what I've realized as I was watching that medley. I was like, oh, I've played a lot of this, and I could play Casino Night Zone forever. Part of why I like that song so much, Geoff, I blame you because a band you were in back in high school, college, did a cover of it that I used to listen to in my car.
It was one of the ska bands I was in college, and it was on our album, yes.
Yeah, it was great. But by the time we got to the rock concert, I was so bought in and having so much fun. And let's be honest, these are not complicated songs. By the time we got to the chorus the second time, I was singing along with everybody and felt like I was there.
And half the time they had the lyrics on the screen, not in a karaoke way, but in a very dynamic typography kind of way. I loved that. And yeah, it made it easier to join in.
But they only did that for a couple of the metal songs where I think it was really hard to like hear the words if you didn't. I loved that they didn't do that for some of the other ones. There was great gameplay footage that made me want to go play those games.
Right.
And then where the gameplay footage was just like the same boss fight, they made it more interesting by putting lyrics on the screen to get everybody yelling at the same time together, which was fun.
I think part of that is also that all of the songs that had lyrics, the heavier stuff, are all from Sonic Frontiers, the newest game in the series. And so those songs have been out for a shorter period of time. And I think the soundtrack, the streaming versions of those songs took a while to come out after the game came out too. So like they just wanted you to be familiar. And yes, because there was a lot of screaming and yelling. And what's funny is I'm mixed on Screamo. Bands like Linkin Park have gotten me to like it more because I like the way Chester does it. It's usually part of the melody. It's usually for emphasis or for emotion. May he rest in peace. And so like I like those kinds of songs, and these were similar. They weren't trying to ape Linkin Park, but it was definitely inspired by bands of that ilk that like use the screaming to emphasize points and to reach an emotional crescendo of the metal song. I love that kind of stuff. I eat it up. They also closed the show with a cappella kind of like stripped down acoustic version of One Way Dream, which is also from Frontiers, which I think is the credit song. It's been a while since I beat it, but it's like this kind of hopeful song. They stripped it down for the encore and just did with the conductor also singing like this kind of like just small drum and slight riff version of it, which was very good. First of all, G, thank you for that question. And secondly, talking about the more specifics, Sarah, you mentioned the video in the background. What I love about video game concerts, because they did this at the Final Fantasy one also, is they have gameplay because they know this kind of concert isn't like a rock concert typically, and like they want to have something to bring people in, and also so people know what game the song is from, right? And the fact that they did those medleys of gameplay, but also like during the Casino Night Zone medley, there's a part where the drums kind of repeat and the horns like triple. They like had effects on the gameplay, like the camera spinning or the character getting hurt 3 times in a row or whatever. 2 things like that in the medley for comedic effect, and I really like that too.
They did that a lot in the Sonic 2 medley. They also did that during Chemical Plant Zone, during the bit where there's that like dun dun dun, those sort of hits. They had the footage with Sonic sort of in the chemical under the water, and they did like a huge close up with like shaking, and it had the numbers of drowning over Sonic's head. It really played up that drama. Everyone was laughing their heads off over that one. Like the Sonic 2 medley especially, they played a lot with that kind of drama on top of it.
Yeah, and I think that that's where you first got the crowd really getting into it. Was it moments like that? I mean, we all know it's a recorded video that goes to the music, but it felt like watching a speed run because when that Sonic got out of that water, the entire audience cheered.
Yeah. You mentioned the Sonic Mania medley. So Sonic Mania has 5 characters: Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Mighty, and Ray. Yes. And so whenever Sonic or any character would go behind or through something that would block the character, a different character would come out. And so there'd be all these quick changes. And the first couple of times it happened, the audience gasped and like cheered because it just felt like a magic trick. Even though you can change on the fly, I think, in one of the game modes. But even still, it was just fun to see that. It was like a magician swapping out with someone else and added to the impact of what was already a great performance. And just like you said, like the video for the rock stuff, when they showed the Year of Shadow and everyone lost their minds, they showed all the CG cutscenes from the game and people just cheering. Historically, one of the worst games in the franchise. And I love Shadow, and it's not a good game.
But the story is so over-emotional and epic, and so this is exactly the right medium for it. And you have hours of gameplay footage or of cutscenes or of whatever else to construct a music video. If you were to go to a concert and the music video is playing in the background, that almost feels like playing to tape in a way. But because you're able to construct something from a game experience, we're all there not for the emotional views of Shadow the Hedgehog per se, but we are there because we love this franchise. We love these characters. We love these games. It's a little beyond just an oh, remember when. It is engaging in that fandom with the crowd. And so why wouldn't you construct a further piece of that experience and point of connection by using the gameplay and game footage? So we all cheered when Sonic jumped out of the water in Chemical Plant Zone because we have all drowned in that zone. And so we were cheering for Sonic, for the videographer, and for ourselves, watching all the 3D Sonic footage. And Sarah and I are just getting more and more hyped for games we've never played. It's past and future as far as that goes. So it was such a great elevation of the experience. So when they advertise Sonic Symphony as an immersive experience, and as somebody who's done a lot of immersive theater in their professional life, that word has lost all meaning. But it is immersive, and they go for it.
Yeah. I really like how they shaped it. And also, something that didn't occur to me, so I jokingly said before that I was crying, but I was tearing up through most of the rock performance. And it's funny, like they're playing songs that are really good from really bad games too. Like they played the title track from Sonic and the Black Knight, which is probably one of the worst Wii U games ever made.
We joked about how they had a music video footage from Sonic 06, and we went, I think that was 90% of all playable moments of that game.
Right. But yet, those songs are still great because they hired incredible musicians to make them. So even the games that were less than, those moments are hype because the music is. And I think that's the magic of this live performance that, like, I wouldn't necessarily feel if I went back to Sonic and the Black Knight. Now, admittedly, I do have a soft spot for that in Sonic and the Secret Rings. They were the earliest Wii-specific Sonic games until we got Colors much later after I'd gotten rid of my Wii.
Right, yeah.
Like I said, it's Crush 40, especially for those 2 songs. they know what they're doing. At that point, they'd been doing this a long time, since the early 90s. And so like making an epic showdown song is nothing. It's like breathing to that band. But I like that because of the videos, because of the crowd, because of the live band that was performing, who were also great, who weren't Crush 40, but were doing great versions of these songs. All of that mixed together to make for a very enjoyable concert experience, whether you knew the music or not.
Yeah. Like I said earlier, I know a bunch of the titles of later Sonic games, but don't necessarily have them in a timeline in my head. So coming back to it or getting hyped for these games, I don't necessarily have the baggage of, okay, maybe this time we'll get a really good 3D Sonic. And there have been good ones, and there have been mediocre ones, and there's been Sonic and the Black Knight. So we have that. But because none of those are the latest one or anything like that, I can look at it as a flat circle. And anybody who was there for release after release after release following along, like you, Matt, it's a great time to remember what was good about it. Maybe going back and playing it in the cards, not in the cards, giving something its fair shake. Because there's plenty of games that I didn't like when they came out, but I went back and went, I don't have the same stake in this. The money's been spent, or the time is whatever, or future releases have happened. I can play this and appreciate what I do like about it. When we were heading back, what happened for us was, okay, if we accidentally have 3D Sonic games that we don't know about, it's going to be because we have subscribed to PlayStation Plus for entirely too long. And I download all the free games and we get sent ones. And I'm like, I know I've seen Sonic at least once. Oh, we have Sonic Forces. Cool. And learning about Sonic Forces and how, because that came out just after Sonic Mania when everyone was losing their minds over that, it was ultimately disappointing for a lot of people by going by reviews.
But I came back from Sonic Symphony and have not stopped playing it, especially because I'm incapable of doing main quest when side quest exists, and they keep popping up with, go save this person. And I'm like, okay. So I may never finish it.
Probably not. Fun fact about Sonic Forces is it's actually concurrent with Sonic Mania in the timeline. There's a crystal in Sonic Mania that makes everything go timey-wimey. That same crystal is what forms the villain that you face off against. I can't remember his name.
Infinite. And that's why the older Sonic that they say is from another dimension, it's actually a time-displaced Sonic from the end of Sonic Mania.
Correct. I ended up liking that game. A lot of people didn't. I thought the create your own Sonic character idea, like you're inviting in a part of the internet that maybe we don't want to, but like beyond that.
They were already there, Matt.
I know.
This is just admitting they were always there.
But like, it was a good idea. And like, was it great? No, but I thought it was perfectly playable and fun. The problem is that was the first 3D Sonic game to follow generations, which is why also they weaved into the story the classic Sonic, because the classic Sonic and Tails were in Generations as well.
And if I recall correctly, was a highly regarded part of that game.
Sonic Generations is one of the best 3D Sonic games in a very long time. And and it's one of my favorite overall because I think it was the 20th anniversary that came out or whatever it was.
That sounds about right.
It was celebrating the history of Sonic like this concert is. And so, of course, I was going to eat that shit up. And the fact that we're getting a remaster for modern consoles with a whole separate celebration of Shadow, who is particularly quite a misused character, who I like a lot, and who, I guess I won't spoil the new movies. I mean, everyone knows he's going to be in the new movie. They announced Keanu Reeves is playing him.
Yes.
But, like, he is getting this resurgence that I feel like he deserves because besides having a title game that was really bad, I loved playing as him in 2. I loved playing him in whatever's come since. He's in Forces in the DLC. Like, I'm glad that he's getting that kind of resurgence in that respect because a lot of the other characters have gotten that. Still no re-release of Knuckles Chaos, though, but we won't get into that.
It's okay. We have it on our 32X. If you ever really need to play a terrible game.
I don't need to play a terrible game. I really wish Knuckles would get to lead a good game, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I mean, also something to speak about that we hadn't quite mentioned yet is that the format for the concert worked really well because they started going in order, right? Like they did go 1, 2, 3, Sky Sanctuary from 3, and then they jumped all over the place. And then in the back half, they completely jumped all over the place. And not only did the crowd get more interactive just because of the energy, but like the band was interactive. And I love when live shows do that. You know, the conductor was interactive with the audience in the first half, talking about what they're going to play and like being excited to be there. And then the lead singer of the rock band that came out to play all the songs was really interactive. I think I will always look fondly on Sonic and the Black Knight now because the chorus, the very metal chorus, oh, he charged up the crowd to do that for him during the song. And like that just makes the song better because I'll remember that live experience will supersede all of the gameplay of Sonic and the Black Knight.
I mean, the fact that, look, you had a room full of nerds, and then they were given directions, and they were
Right.
here for music. I had never heard that song before. I have never played Sonic and the Black Knight, but you bet I was sitting there waiting for my cue. Just being like, I am going to get a good grade in crowd participation.
Yep. And I was going to say, it's very clear that that band or whoever produced the show made the second half to be a good band set list more so than trying to do it in order. I think the symphonic part was taking you on a historical journey, doing funny moments, playing on the nostalgia, and the second half was just like, how do we make a good concert out of what we have to work with?
And once you have lyrical content, that is very much something to keep in mind, because if you're making a medley, you can choose what the vibes are. You can set that up, and so it does make more sense for it to feel historical. But yeah, no, Ty Christian is the name of the singer that was performing, and I don't believe the rest of the musicians were the rest of Lords of the Trident, which is, when you look up Ty Christian, the band that comes up, the most metal band on earth: fire, explosions, face melting, shredding, and barbarian rage, according to their Instagram. Actually, no, according to their Twitter. But yeah, you're able to put that sort of thing together, and you can't necessarily have the same kind of banter and back and forth. You know, the conductor and the first violinist just doesn't have the same je ne sais quoi as the lead singer and the keyboardist and the guitarist and Blaze, the drummer, because yeah, that's apparently his name according to Ty, and that's the coolest name for a drummer, for anybody, frankly. It was a cool thing of the second half having that sort of concert feel. And again, I think if it started with the concert and then the back half was, and here's a nice walk through memory lane of Sonic the Hedgehog, it would have been such a letdown. They curated it beautifully.
Yeah, I agree. Easily the best video game related concert I've been to. And I don't know if that's really any fault of the other live concerts I've seen, and more the fact that I always forget how important Sonic is to me. I know it is, right? Like, I know I love this franchise. I play every game that comes out, with the exception of Heroes for some reason. And something that I don't even think I brought up in our Genesis episode, Geoff, but the Genesis was the first console I bought with my own money. The Nintendo I inherited from my brother when he got a PlayStation, I think, or something. Like, I inherited the Nintendo much later on, and I chose to get a Genesis with Sonic 2. And so, like, that kind of is inherently tied to my origins as someone who pursued and purchased video games. And I think part of that is ingrained in me. Also, I'm just a sucker for hero anthems, and Sonic is full of them, like wall-to-wall hero anthems.
As I learned.
Yeah.
Yes.
There were certain lines that repeated themselves, and I went, I'm detecting a theme here.
Yeah.
I'm not mad. Quite the opposite. I'm just noticing.
You did
Yeah.
say that during the show to me.
Yes, I did.
I think the irony also, Sarah, as a 2D Sonic player, is that the only game that would have filled in that gap of, oh, they do anthems from the classic era, you didn't play until recently, which is Sonic CD, because Sonic Boom, which there is an orchestrated version on the album version. I looked it up.
I was wondering about rights a little bit.
They did lose the rights to it for a little while, and then got them back. That's why it's in the version of Origins. They had to like wrestle for it, but that was like the only hint from the classic era of like, oh, this is a rock song about Sonic. But since you missed that, you really had no context until you played it recently, and it's out of time. So why would you even connect that, especially not playing 3D Sonic games? And so I think that's very funny that the only game guaranteed to set you up for that kind of arc, you completely missed anyway.
Yeah, completely. Well, and the other thing I wanted to say is recently our nephew came over to our apartment, well, like with his siblings and parents, and he was like, I want to play Sonic games. And he was not doing well on the Genesis because he plays in an emulator with some, quality of life improvements. And we're like, well, we have this one for the Wii. And so we got him on Sonic and the Secret Rings. And that was literally the only time I'd ever seen a Sonic game go forward and back like this, where you could like lock onto something and jump and hit it. And apparently there's a ton of those that I learned about. And now, the control scheme I find much better in Sonic Forces than I did in the Sonic and the Secret Rings. But he, as a nearly 8-year-old, loved it, the motion controls of the Wii, was able to play it in a way that he wasn't able to play the earlier games because his hand-eye coordination is fine, but it's not amazing.
Yeah.
We were playing Sonic Mania together, and he'd get to a spot and be like, can you help me get past this? And I'm like, yeah, I definitely can. And then I would get to the secret stages and he would tell me how bad I am at them.
After asking you for help.
Oh, yeah, he can't do them, but
No.
it's okay. But neither can Aunt Sarah.
So yeah, Sonic Secret Rings and The Black Knight were the two storybook games, and they were designed with kids in mind, I think, as the Wii controls often were designed for kids first.
Right.
Very much a more for younger audience first,
Intuitive,
and then adults could play.
casual.
Right. So I think that was part of the problem too. I mean, they just inherently ended up not being great games, but for a child who's not played any of these games before, of course he would love it, right? Because it's big, it's flashy, you can run. And Sonic runs by himself, so you don't have to make him run. He just runs and you can control the other stuff. And so, like, it totally makes sense that he would love it. And, like, the song that Crush 40 did for Sonic and the Secret Rings also slaps. So, like, I'm glad that we got to see this. Thank you for asking me to go because you guys picked up the tickets. I would easily see it again.
It's coming back. It's coming to Newark, I think, in December.
My only problem with seeing it again so soon is it might be the same set list. And
Oh, probably. But this time, you won't disappoint Ken by not going with them.
Right, that's true. Yeah, I'm sure Ken actually wants to go to the Newark show. So we'll see.
Well, while we're talking about venues, though, real quick, this was the second show added at the United Palace. So part of the reason we picked up the tickets is because there's a beautiful historic theater that got restored by the Miranda Foundation that has lots of programming at it, and this was one of them. They advertised, I think it was an 8 o'clock show, and it sold out super fast before we had decided to get our shit together and get tickets to it. Then they announced this 3 o'clock show, and the tickets weren't selling as well. They didn't go as quickly. They were advertising it all the way up till the week of the show, and it ended up being, I think, sold out in the end or close to it because it was so packed. But this is like my neighborhood theater. People traveled here to see Sonic Symphony, and I don't think I realized how big a deal it was when it was just something I could walk to down the street in this beautiful theater I like seeing stuff in.
And then you saw so many people in outfits in Sonic, what are those called? Kigurumis? The onesie pajamas and other inspired outfits, and not just Sonic, but even the most obscure. Was there anyone dressed as Big the Cat? I hope there was.
I didn't see anyone, but I would. Fun fact, the same person who voiced Big the Cat also voiced Duke Nukem.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, St. John. There we go.
John St. John. Yeah, we even saw a famous Robotnik cosplayer as the Genesis-style ball-shaped Robotnik.
There was a giant line to take a picture with him.
Yep, and he has a YouTube channel where he plays Robotnik. Like, it's just, this is the kind of nerdery that I live for. And, like, I'm grateful that people, like, Sarah messaged me saying, we're redheads, so you have to wear something orange and be tails because we don't own any orange. And I was like, first of all, Knuckles is my favorite character. I'm going to wear something red, so hold your horses. But also, I also don't have anything orange. But it was just very funny. Like, we were going to dress themed color-wise to characters.
Yes.
Meanwhile, folks showed up in full cosplay. We saw someone dressed as Knuckles with the gloves on and carrying a cowboy hat and had arrived with their girlfriend, wife, partner, whoever, friend, dressed as Rouge the Bat.
They both killed it.
They did. It was
Looked
so
awesome.
Good.
Listen, I was just proud to have my old Sega tie that I've had since the 90s. It had all sorts of Genesis stuff to it that was current. It had Welcome to the Next Level. It had Sega Sports logo and everything else. So that was my little fun thing. And then, you know what? Everyone else went all out.
And like, I don't know, we go to so many nerdy conventions where we see amazing cosplays. I don't know why it didn't occur to me that was what was going to happen here.
Me neither,
But yeah, it felt like a convention. It felt like everybody loved Sonic, went there for this, and was ready to rep and sing. Like they played the opening chord to a song and everybody cheered.
Yeah. And I think also I've gone to other concerts where, I went to the Final Fantasy Crystalline Resonance concert, the piano concerts a little while ago, and there were a handful of dedicated cosplayers that were there.
Yeah.
They looked incredible. But also it was one of those, maybe because of the venue, maybe because it was a piano concert, it was a little more muted. But there was some other little things here and there. So I was like, oh yeah, no, there'll be some folks. Nah, people came out for this. It was so cool.
Well, yeah, I mentioned going to the two versions of Distant Worlds. I went to the one that was delayed during the pandemic that was just broadly for Final Fantasy, and I went with a bunch of friends, including a friend of the show and previous guest, Jesse Vitelli. And then like 2 or 3 months later, maybe a year after, they did the specific, in anticipation of Rebirth, and for Remake, they did a just Final Fantasy VII version of Distant Worlds, and Jesse took me as his date. It was just the two of us, and it was very romantic. But both of those concerts, There were a few cosplayers, someone dressed as Dagger, someone dressed as Aerith, but the room wasn't filled with cosplayers. And so since I had done a symphonic concert like this before, my brain went, oh yeah, there might be a few, but I don't expect any. And like it really was. I mean, also as the furthest into the deep end of the Sonic pool of the three of us, we're lunatics. And so I should have anticipated that because we're pretty crazy and fanatical, especially when you're reserved to picking up table scraps for years because the games are varying quality. But like, I'm so glad we went, and I think it is easily one of the best video game concerts I've been to and easily one of my favorite concert experiences ever. So fun fact, a little behind the scenes, I am playing Sonic Adventure. I'm replaying it for the first time in a long time on my Steam Deck through totally legal means. It's on Steam.
Well, yeah, you bought the Steam Deck legally, so anything you do on it must be legal.
But I'm playing the Dreamcast version, which I never actually played because I'd only played the DX GameCube version because I never owned a Dreamcast. I'm going to be guesting on a podcast talking about the Dreamcast version. And I had started it up just to be like, oh yeah, I love this game. I should play it. I have nostalgia for it. And then after seeing the concert, the next day I promptly spent 5 hours straight playing Sonic's campaign in Sonic Adventure, and now I'm up to Tails' campaign. Like, and I think I may play it through to the end just because I've kind of gotten re-obsessed with Sonic in a way that's kind of breaking my brain, which is an effect I think a lot of video game music and concerts have just in general. Concerts in general, you get more into the thing you saw a concert of because it's just fresh in your brain. But like, I'm considering trying Sonic Lost World again, which I hated when I played 10 minutes of it on Steam, which is also a notoriously bad one. But like, my brain is going, well, maybe Sonic and the Secret Rings wasn't that bad. Maybe you should try it again. And it's like, I don't know if this can be considered brainworms or some other fatal gamer problem, but I just love that the concert was so invigorating that it made me want to revisit a franchise that I love that admittedly since Frontiers I haven't played much of because they're, it was the new thing. I played it and then moved on to other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who wasn't as into it, it made me want to go play it more too. And I think the other thing is it was made with so much love, right?
Yes.
The whole concert, from the footage they were showing to the arrangements of the music. How could you not leave it feeling invigorated, even if you had played through all the Sonic games in the past 6 months, right? It showed it to you in a new way. And that new way was made with so much love that it makes you want to go do it more.
Yeah, and it helps that Sonic music is one of the most notorious Oops All Bangers franchises.
It's true.
It's like Mega Man might be up there. Castlevania has some good ones. I mean, Final Fantasy is Final Fantasy. But as far as high energy from the word go, from its first game, people can argue about the gameplay, people can argue about the direction, but no, the music's good. Music's really good.
Well, it's like when I shared I Am All of Me, I would post it with the caveat, one of the most banger songs from one of the worst games ever. And like most of the responses to anyone in those Discords would be, yeah, but the whole soundtrack slaps, so who cares how bad the game is? And like that's kind of general consensus with a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
Also, Sarah, as Sonic obsessive, I'm very excited you're going on this 3D journey. And so if you want a curated ranked list of all the best 3D Sonic games, I have it in my head already.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I would definitely take that. Also, now it's something we're going to look out for in our video game purchasing, of trying to find some more of these on either the original systems or not. But, us physical collectors over here, we got to get the game the way we do it.
I will say, Sarah, for your physical and mental health, I would wait to play Sonic Frontiers, not because you won't like it, but because the collectibles and side quests are so expansive that you will never do anything again for the rest of your life. And I'd much rather you get to play other games first.
I mean, we're almost done with Infinite Wealth.
Yeah, I mean, I had to catch all the Sujimon and then get nothing for it.
You filled the dossier.
Look, I don't know what to tell you.
Still mad. This happened last night.
I love the Sujimon thing. I think it's very funny. I loved this version of it because it had the literal like Pokemon style underground battles, but like, no, I'm not doing that. I barely complete the Pokedex in actual Pokemon games. Not doing it.
Oh, that's mad.
Me neither. I was so close though, Storm. There were like 5 left, and I was like, I can do that. And then I did it, and I was like, where's my prize? Why don't I get anything?
You spent so much in-game money on Gashapon. You hate
and
Gashapon.
I don't use consumable resources, including money. That's not how you do video games.
So just tell me this, Matt.
Yes.
Does Sonic Frontiers use gacha mechanics, or is it find things? Okay, so there we go. That's a point in his favor. Okay, cool. But I think maybe we should hold off for a little while.
There is also a Big the Cat fishing mini game where you can get some of the stuff that you need to beat the game just from that and skip other things, which people were mad at. And I was like, Oh, you mean I don't have to play the 2D or 3D Sonic stages and I can just fish and get some of those quest items? That's brilliant. Why don't more games do this?
I like it when it's an option. Like an
Yeah.
either or is
Yeah,
great,
yeah.
not a you have to do all of it. But sometimes, you just get obsessive about finishing a thing.
And sometimes there's fishing minigames in everything.
That's also true. Yeah. But to be fair, Big the Cat did it pretty early on, I think.
Oh, it defines him as far
yeah.
as anyone is concerned.
Literally in Sonic Adventure, you fish Froggy out of one of the boss versions of Chaos. It's the stupidest shit, but I love it. It's so dumb.
Nowadays, if you see Big the Cat and he doesn't have a fishing pole, you know something's wrong. So
Right. Yeah.
it defines him. This is
It does
fine.
define him. I don't know if I have anything else to add to this concert specifically. I think I would definitely go see it again multiple times, and it's got me back to listening to songs I loved from all of these games that I just kind of would always listen to, be like, oh, this song rules, and then forget about it. And now I have a dedicated playlist to it, so I will not forget about it. But like, it makes me think what other concerts can do. I know there was a touring Zelda Symphony during one of the anniversaries of Zelda. Nintendo has done it more broadly. But like, imagine a Mario Symphony touring and then they break out into Jump Up Superstar halfway through, right? Like that kind of thing seems really fun to me. And it made me remember that Sonic doesn't just have a very specific gameplay style, like you were saying, Geoff, but also music style. And like, even a lot of the instrumentals, like, also are rooted in rock and roll, and it just never really occurred to me was seeing the live performance that made me remember this kind of pivot for Sonic as a mascot franchise versus a lot of the others and the different kinds of musical things they've done that are also great but different.
Well, yeah, and that's also why it's often compared to Mega Man, because Mega Man was also doing a more rock-oriented musical style while utilizing the fertile but limited sound chips that they had. Even the Yamaha chip that we were talking about last episode that was so incredible on the Sega Genesis could only do so much, but in that pushing of attitude, in that everything else that they were setting forth with Sonic, of course they needed it to go hard and be cool. Even when it didn't need to be rock music, there was some energy and ethos to it. So that carries through even as they go into other genres. It translates well enough for symphonic instruments because it wasn't necessarily about guitar distortion in the first place. So there's this interesting crossover that goes on with it. All of this adds up to, Sonic Symphony was such a great experience.
Yeah. I think that also, while I did want to dive deeper into video game live performances, I think we can save that for another episode, but I do want to just mention some stuff I've seen, and I know you both have seen a variety of really cool stuff at MagFest as well, but like, it makes me remember Video Games Live when that was a tour, and when Tommy Tallarico wasn't arguably Tommy Tallarico was always a douchebag. But
wasn't publicly known as.
Right. That show was really great because it was an amalgamation of different video games and like modern, retro. It was a mix of everything. And I just remember loving it and going, why isn't there more of this? And so I'm really glad that now it feels like every other week I'm getting an email from Square Enix saying, Distant Worlds is playing here. We're doing a Final Fantasy XIV concert, whatever. Like, I'm so glad that there's more of that. And I just hope it continues to increase, especially as the music in games continues to get more complex and increase in that way. Like, look, if there were a John Williams tour tomorrow with John Williams or someone just playing John Williams music, I'd go see that. Like, I think there's definitely a market for it. And I know that there are other symphonic performances, but I just love this root in musical nerdery as well as video game nerdery. It's like the cross section that makes up my existence. And so like getting to see Distance Worlds, getting to go to MagFest and seeing, performers like Mega Ran and Insane Ian, I think that kind of stuff is awesome. And then I feel like you guys saw like symphonies at MagFest recently, didn't you? Weren't there like symphonic performers there at one point?
There were some smaller groups that used symphonic instruments. I don't know if we had necessarily any large symphony things going on.
Got it. Okay.
Didn't we see like the Baltimore Gamer Symphony Orchestra or something like that?
Oh,
they
yes,
were
yes.
smaller, but they were just in a jam space, right? So we talked about this on the MagFest episode, but one of the things that's really cool about MagFest is there's like all different levels of music, right? There's everything from a jam space to a small stage to a giant main stage concert where, they check you for metal objects before you go in.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I've said for years, I've threatened that I was going to bring my Switch and my standing speakers for my DJ setup and a copy of Fuser, and patron of the show, Robert Proin, was going to bring his guitar, and we were going to improvise music sets in MagFest in one of the halls. We've yet to do that, but it sounds like it'd be fun, and what I love about MagFest as an experience also is like it also has all kinds of genres and different kinds of performances and music the whole weekend long. That kind of cross-section of nerdiness is just some of my favorite stuff. And so I'm glad we got to experience it together at this. And it's going to make me want us to go, not that we wouldn't anyway, but at future events that we're at together, like hunt out some of the nerdy stuff. If there's a band playing stuff we might like or whatever, there's something about the energy of the room with people who love a thing so much that I feel like what you said is pretty correct, Sarah. Like, of course, you wouldn't have loved The Rock on its own because you had no personal connection to it. The reason you enjoyed it here is you got a little bit of what you liked, and then the electricity of the room really pulled you into the rest of it. And I think
Absolutely.
that can happen with like any kind of music. It's why when I go, even though I know you don't see bands you don't know and music you don't know, the reason I like going to those kinds of concerts is because if I'm with big fans, then I kind of get wrapped up in the energy and usually find a thing to love, and then we'll go brain dump on whatever that band was afterwards. And you got to have that experience that you normally wouldn't. And I'm glad it was such a positive one.
Yeah, me too. And look, I get that a little bit at MagFest, right? Like walking past a room, seeing people playing DDR on stage while Abandoned Quest's rocking out with music I've never heard. I'm like, well, you got me. I want to see what these people are DDRing.
And you said that was a really cool concert, too.
It was.
So Sonic Symphony was fantastic. And we've mentioned a few others that we've attended before, things like that. Do either of you have an ideal, like, I would love to hear this music, maybe symphonically, maybe a different thing? Like, for example, Matt, you mentioned Mario music before. I think I would love to see a concert of Mario music, but done by a jazz combo. Like, something no bigger than a big band setup, where you can get like Jump Up Superstar, but you can also really lean into the jazziness of Koji Kondo's music and have some interesting things that are very faithful to the originals. And also, come on, let's just do some hard bop of Mario 2. Let's go kind of thing. And I think that'd be something I'd love to see. Do either of you have any kind of, I would go see this music in a heartbeat. I would love to hear it like this.
I want Cartoon Network does Nintendo.
I mean, yeah, Cartoon Network does incredible work, and probably
I feel like that's a free
anything.
space for all of us. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
no, but Jer, if you're listening,
First of all, thank you for listening. I don't know why you would listen to this podcast, but thank you. But go on.
But no, that would be like my ideal, right? Like I want something fun in a musical style that I like. And like even Nintendo broadly, like there's plenty of Nintendo games I have not played, but that is another thing that I have extreme nostalgia for. And like if there wasn't something from Super Mario Brothers 3 in there, I think they'd be doing it wrong, right?
Yeah. I think for me, I think you hinted at it earlier, Geoff, but like Capcom presents a Mega Man retrospective with Mega Man and Mega Man X. Like Mega Man X also, if you did live, you would need a rock band because like Spark Mandrill shreds. Like that whole song shreds. And a lot of the Mega Man X music does. But like that would be my ideal because I think besides Sonic and Mario, the franchise I know the best is Mega Man. I've played every single Mega Man game except Command Network or Command Mission. Command Mission.
The turn-based RPG, yes.
Yeah, I haven't played Command Mission. And the network battle games, I played like only a couple, but I feel like that doesn't count, although I guess it does.
Yeah, the handheld games kind of live in their own thing. Like everyone forgets about Extreme.
Yeah.
And Extreme 2.
Well, and I have those, and I also have Mega Man Zero, which I've played 1 and 2 of. So like
Nice.
Played most of them, but like that would be a series of music that I would love to hear live because those songs like live in my brain rent free as well.
Fantastic. Well, at this point, we put it to you, listeners. Have any of you attended a Sonic Symphony concert? What'd you think of it? What do you think is essential for a good video game concert? What's a video game series you'd like to hear? How would you like to hear them? Do you want us to review more video game concerts? Because, I mean, twist my arm.
Yeah,
so
we definitely go to them.
Oh, absolutely. I will travel weird distances for some strange things and also concerts. So please, any of that, let us know. There's so many great ways to get in touch with us. You can find us on any social media that we are currently active on at Fun and Games Pod. And as of this episode, that is Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Tumblr. You can email us at funandgamespod@gmail.com. Let us know what you thought of this episode, what you thought of previous episodes, who you'd like us to talk with, what games you'd like us to talk about, what subjects you'd like us to cover in future episodes. Send us pictures of your video game collection. Send us your favorite piece of Sonic the Hedgehog memorabilia. I actually don't have a lot of cool Sonic things in my space, and I'd love to see what you have in yours if you're willing to share it. You can also visit certainpov.com and find not only other fantastic nerdy podcasts, but a permanent invite link to our Discord server where a lot of these conversations continue and where we also put out the call for, do any of you have any questions about Sonic Symphony? That happens there. If you want a one-stop spot for everything we're putting out, you can also visit our Patreon, patreon.com/funandgamespod. There is a free tier. You don't have to donate any money to support us, but those that do, we appreciate those who have the means, the time, and the want to do so. We especially want to shout out those that are up on the high scoreboard and the high score tier and above. And today, the high scoreboard is Alex Lavelle, Case Aiken, Daniel Needon, Roger Reichart, Alejandro Alves, Curly Bright, Film It Yourself, Patrick Edwards, Robert Prine, Sean Bowen, and Wes Bates. Thank you so much for your support. Please enter your initials. We are going to have some gameplay footage behind. I think it's a weird sort of, we're going to kind of jiggle the cartridge a little bit, make this whole like glitch core kind of thing. I think we're really going to have some fun with this because the letters you put in are going to make different tones. So let's compose something together.
Also, we do put out questions like we did today and got the question from G when I remember. So if you want to be in on the ground floor, Twitter is the best place for that, or the Discord server. Joining the Discord, I always post the questions there because that's the first place I usually post them. My memory is vapid at best in all the other locations. So follow the other stuff at your caution, leisure. I don't know. I don't have the right words. Convenience. That's the word. Shout out and thank you, of course, to our executive producer, the one and only Sarah Moonen, for joining us today. Nice to get to record with you this time.
I know. It's been great.
If you have the time, and I know you do, please rate and review us on your podcast platform of choice. It really is the best thing you can do for us and costs you literally $0. And that way, when people actually like Google Sonic Symphony or search in their podcast app, Sonic Symphony, our episode will jump to the top. iTunes, Spotify, Good Pods, Pocket Cast, literally anywhere where they let you rate and review, please do so because it is a huge help to us.
Yes, we do appreciate the help, whether it's through reviews, whether it's on Patreon, whether it's through chatting on Discord, or just listening to the show and being here. Thank you. We couldn't do this without you. This is a conversation. Thank you for being a part of it. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I'm Matt A.K. Stormageddon.
And happy gaming.
Hey, Nerf herders.
You sure you want to go with that?
Hey, everyone.
There we go. More inviting.
Have you ever had a movie that you really wanted to love, but something holds you back?
Or one that you did love in spite of a flaw?
Well, I'm Case Aiken.
And I'm Sam Alisea.
And on Another Pass, we sit down with cool guests to look at movies that we find fascinating.
But flawed.
And we try to imagine what could have been done when they were made to give them that little push.
We're not experts. We just believe in criticism.
Constructive criticism.
Sure.
So come take another pass at some movies with us.
And every now and then, we can celebrate movies that did it on their own, too.
You can find us at certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Pass it on.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.